other people might like to hear. Okay, can
Okay.
you repeat
Yeah.
that? Can you repeat that, Martin?
Yeah. Sure. Yeah. Just talking about how been doing some drone flying in Thailand over some bits and pieces on the railway, and I've just learnt that the Thai authorities have now put some restrictions on drone flying. You now have to register your drone within Thailand to be able to fly. Otherwise, they put some pretty hefty penalties on it. They're talking about 100,000 baht fines or imprisonment. So
Oh
obviously,
dear.
being Thailand, you don't want to get on the wrong side of the law when you're up there. So if I'm going to do some future drone flying up there, I've got to start looking at some paperwork, and that's going to be another hurdle because it's all going to be in Thai. But luckily, I've got a few people up there that be able to help me out with with the forms and the process and so forth. So it's probably just another one of those revenue raising red tape things that we all have to abide by in this day and age. So I'm
Yeah.
sure that won't be a problem.
Have you put
Yeah.
any of your videos on the web? I know you sent
Uh,
me a photo, but
yeah, I've actually got a channel on YouTube, which I put up about 4 videos so far. So that includes some of the drone flying and some other bits and pieces that I've done in Singapore and done in Thailand as well.
yeah,
Yeah,
if you if you want to, you can have a subdomain of FEPOW family. You can have
yeah,
you can have a subdomain. You operate it all, and you can put some of your links to your videos on YouTube from that.
yes,
You can put a piece of introduction, and then put a link to YouTube, and so people can view it from they've got an intro for it.
yeah. I've been thinking about along those lines about what I'm going to do, sort of as I go along. Obviously, I've been a bit busy with work commitments and other bits and pieces, and ongoing research. So I'm getting to that point where I'll start compiling some stuff and start to sort of build around how I'm going to sort of show it to a wider audience for sure.
Yeah. Bear in mind, though, that you can have a subdomain. What I said was, at the moment, I've set up enough for 10. Kevin's using one,
Yep.
um, and I have linked. I can link into another um, domain if the person wants, but you can use a subdomain, and that's up to you. You get in and upload your stuff to it. It's nothing to do with me. You can upload your stuff, so that
Yeah.
it's completely independent from the FEPOW family, but it is part of the FEPOW family.
Yeah. Sure. Yeah. No. That's something that I'm really considering at the moment. Yeah. What the bits and pieces I want to sort of put together, and I've got some other ideas that and some other footage that I've got. What I'm going to do with that, because I've been taking footage in Thailand now for over 10 years. So I've actually got hours of footage back up, but I've not actually done a great deal with it so far. I've done some of my own sort of private documentary sort of productions, which I've shared with a few other people, but I've never actually sort of done anything broadly with it. So yeah, I've got a few ideas that I might put together.
Yeah, that'd be interesting. Very interesting. The ones you took of the camp, you sent me the photo which your daughter had to go at.
But add in,
Yeah, that was really
yeah,
terrific. So that type of
yeah,
thing would be very interesting. We seem
yeah.
to
Well,
have lost.
Cowden's an amazing,
We seem to
it's
have
an
lost
amazing
him. So
complex.
yeah, go on.
Okay. Yeah, well, Cowden's an amazing complex. It's not just the camp area. It's absolutely vast over probably thousands of hectares of land, because there was obviously, as you know, there was the camp area, and then there was the railway workshops. They
Mm.
had the forge and foundry set up there. They had so it had its own power station.
yeah,
So it was massive engineering works happening there throughout the war period, and the infrastructure is just still sitting out there, on farmland. And I've got a friend in Thailand who took me out there last time I was up there, who's become quite passionate about Khao Din, and he's done a lot of exploration work out there and unearthed a lot of artifacts and bits and pieces. And he showed me around, and it's an enormous site, enormous complex. So
yeah,
yeah, so I've got some some more photos that I've just got to put some stuff together and maybe do
yeah.
some story around it and bits and pieces.
What,
But yeah, as
what web writer are you going to use
which
to
sorry.
write? What are you going to use to write your pages for the web?
Yeah, I'm not really sure at this point because I've not actually been involved in any web design previously. All of my work so far has been by probably video media. I use Pinnacle editing, which I'm actually an ex-skydiver of many years and used to do a lot of videography with skydiving, and so
Yeah,
that's why I've kept the work going because I've had an interest in videography and editing. So I moved out of skydiving and then sort of started filming the railway and bits and pieces in Singapore. So that sort of become the interest and the fascination with it. So when it comes to actually putting together in a web form, I'm not really sure at this point because I've not really looked at it in any great detail at this point. So yeah,
yeah.
any
I,
any uh,
yeah. Well, I was
any
I was
views or really?
I was having a lot of trouble with um, putting together the research pages within the FEPOW family, and my old program, NetFusion 11, wouldn't allow me to do certain things with it. That kept on, well, that should have collected from my database all the information on the people, but it wasn't. That was collecting. Kevin had sent me two people he was researching, and that kept on putting the same one in twice instead of putting both of them in. So what I did is I actually purchased NetFusion 2015, and that was okay. So I've put that on now, and I've rebuilt the FEPO family site, and that's working out really well. And that doesn't
Right.
duplicate, so that looks one step up, and it seems to be a lot quicker. But NetFusion, I mean, I've been building the websites with that for a lot of years now, about 20 odd years. So I'm so used to it. But that is a difficult program to get the hang of. But once you get the hang of it, you can do so much with it. It's, I
Yeah.
mean, like your videos, you can include your videos within your text instead of linking into YouTube. Um,
Mhm.
but another way of doing it, you can use um, WordPress. I write my blog on WordPress. It's okay for simple things. It's not like NetFusion, which you can go into detail. It's not as good as that, but it's okay. It's okay to start with. But you
Yep.
can get hold of NetFusion. I think you can get up to NetFusion 5 or 6 free of charge now from
Okay.
their website. They do let people try it free of charge, or you can get the 2015 and try it for 30 days and buy it if you want. If not, you know.
Yeah.
So that's. But NetFusion. The only reason I bought the new one is because I've been doing it a long time. They keep sending you updates, and should the upgrade was £79, just the upgrade, and they sent me a thing for £26. So I thought, yeah, I'll get that then. So I got 26 quid. Yeah, that's all right. But to get the full
Yeah.
version without the upgrade is about £134. It's
Yeah.
it's not a cheap program. But
No,
it's a good program. You can do loads with it, but that does take a
that's right.
while
I
to
mean,
get.
I'm the same with editing because I've upgraded my Pinnacle several times, and it gets to a point where you start thinking, oh no, I'll stick with this one. I know this version. I'll stay with this, and then of course, as time goes on, better features become available. And think, oh, better upgrade to this one because I can start featuring this and doing this. And yeah, so it gets expensive as you keep going along there.
Yeah, but WordPress is for nothing, so you can get that for nothing, and you can use Microsoft and save it as an HTML file. We've got Richard on now. Can you hear us, Richard? Yeah. Have you got your mic turned on? If you have a look down the right-hand side of the screen, you've got audio on,
Yeah,
video
got it
on.
now.
You're
Got me
there.
now?
You're there. Yeah, we got
Yeah,
you.
sorry I'm so late. Had a software update when I woke up this morning. Took 20 minutes.
I had one as well. I had one, and I let it run, and then I tried to get on Blue Jeans, and it wouldn't let me on. And I thought, oh no, that's all I want today. But
Yeah.
I restarted, and that was okay after that. But
Okay.
they've had about 4 or 5 upgrades this last month, haven't they?
They've been coming
Windows.
thicker and fast.
Oh, that's ridiculous, isn't it? And I can't honestly see what they're doing.
No. Anyway,
No,
sorry to interrupt your flow.
that's okay. Martin's from Australia.
Hi, Richard.
Now and again, Martin,
Hello, Martin.
your video will freeze, but that's okay because your sound carries on. So don't worry about it. It's from Australia. It's still quite good.
Well, you're going to chest it because I'm in Nigeria.
Oh,
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 the
oh
four
well, we're
corners of the
doing
earth.
okay. We're doing okay then.
Yeah.
You're coming through quite well, Richard.
It's good where I have a fiber optic connection into the flat here, so it's usually fairly good, but it does that freezing of the video from time to time on Skype and things.
Yeah. Well, this Blue Jeans, I did have a go with Skype, but the Blue Jeans is quite good, and the pictures are very good. So there seemed to be a good one to go on with. Well, it seems I don't think Tim is going to come back. We had Tim on earlier, but he was having problems connecting, so he hasn't come back as yet. So we'll just carry on where we were. The record is on, and I put the recording on the FEPOW family secure pages so the members can get in and watch the video back. So if there's anything you want to look back on, you can do. Okay, it's a good facility. It's but I have to warn people the recording is on.
No problem.
Right. I'll just go through it roughly. There's only us 3 on at the moment, so I'll just go through it roughly. I've got to say that Keith, Walter, and Ray have sent their apologies. Keith is away, Walter's away, and Ray, as I said, Martin, his mother, she's 89, but she's had a stroke, and so he's had to go to the hospital. So he said he don't think he'll be able to make it. So, but Ray is quite good because he gives us a lot of Uben. Have I got it right, Martin? Uben.
Ubon, yeah.
Yeah.
Ubon.
He has a go at me for pronouncing it wrong. But his research on there is absolutely great. And we do get in touch quite a bit. This last week, Tony has been in touch, Tony Bannum. He does Hong Kong. He's written 4 books on Hong Kong now. And he's been in touch quite a bit this last week because that was the anniversary of the Lisbon Rouge sinking. He's quite keen on doing a talk. So that's one thing that is really coming up. That's early in the new year because this side of Christmas he's really busy. He told me how many miles he does flight, and it's absolutely ridiculous. He's all over the place. But so that's the apologies. I will start making a note of the apologies because I get them through and I don't write them down. And so from now on, I will write them down so I can read out who apologises. The minutes of last meeting, the committee was formed, Keith as chairman, Gillian as treasurer and myself as secretary. The treasurer's report was accepted. I'm just going through this quickly so we don't waste time. We thanked the donations, which we have sent a letter thanking for the donations. Ray asked for a different approach to relation reference, so I've now rebuilt it and I'm calling it researching names, which is better because, as Ray says, he hasn't got a relative, he does research. So researching names is better. Are you there, Tim?
Oh, we got Tim back.
Can you hear us, Tim?
It's good.
Have you got your mic turned on, Tim? Yeah, your mic is on, Tim, but we can't hear you. Try again, Tim. No, we're getting no sound, Tim.
Improves.
Oh, we got that bit. Say it again. Say it again, Tim. No, we can't get your sound, Tim. No, we can't get it. You listen, you'll be okay. You can hear us, I can see that. Right, we're just going through the minutes of the last meeting. Ray asked for a different approach to the names, which I've done. I've rebuilt the website and rebuilt, calling it researching names now, which is better because if you're researching 4 or 5 names, you can fill in the research form now, which I'll put on, and you can fill it in and I can put it on the internet. So it doesn't matter how many people you're researching, send in 1 form per person. Okay, that's all right. Say like Kevin Snowden has got 2. So he's got 2 forms, he's researching 2 people. And then I can add it to the website and people can see who is researching who, okay? So that's the researching. Yeah, Tony Bannon's okay, giving a talk. Gillian is now sending out the renewals from last year, so they should be in the post anytime. She has got some back now. I think that's okay for the meeting.
Are we posting out renewals, Ronnie?
Yeah. Gillian is now posting them out.
That's a bit old-fashioned, sorry.
Yeah. Well, Gillian,
for me, that's got 2 homes. I'm not sure when I'll see it.
Yeah. Well,
so
Gillian,
I'm probably registered in Aberdeen, where my home is.
Yeah. Well, Gillian is a bit old-fashioned in that way. You've got to bear in mind we are over 70, and you know the newfangled stuff. Gillian worked at NatWest Bank, and she also worked in the county court, and she does tend to do things her way, and she does them quite well. So I leave her to it. She has got all the. I
guess I'll get it at Christmas when I'm home.
Yeah, but they will be. They are in the post. So what I'll do is I'll get her to send it out via email as well. Will that be okay?
That's the quick way for me.
Yeah, and then if she sends it out by the email, I'll ask her to post them and email them, and then so everyone will get them. Yeah, so Ray has said he can't make it. I've got notes here, so I get everything done. Ray, if you're listening, Tim, you didn't hear it before. Ray's mother has had a stroke. She's 89 and she's in hospital, and so he's running backwards and forwards to see her. So unfortunately, he can't make it today. He can't make it because he's away, but he has given me some ideas because we've had a chat about how the meetings should go, and he did give his apologies for not making it today, but um, he said what we talked about last time is that one thing that does annoy me, and I can research for months on a subject and then find out somebody else has been researching the same subject, which to me, over 70, and I'm really stuck on doing the Java index. I haven't got that much time left to get things done. And it seems to me I'm wasting my time if I'm researching something that somebody else is researching. So I had a word with Keith about it, and he's come up with the same thing. We somehow want to get an idea of who's researching what. And as you know, Keith is quite high in FEPOW, and he is going to put it to them that we have some kind of idea of who's researching what, okay, which will make it a lot easier and don't waste time. That's the main thing. So that's his first idea. The second one, what do the members want to get out of the meetings? Well, I think we have discussed this. It's good to talk. It's good to see faces, and we have talks about, like we have, Martin, this morning on your your drones.
Yes.
Yeah, and how much it's going to cost you in Taiwan. How much was it?
Not really sure yet, but it's just reams of paperwork, no doubt.
Yeah, but if you don't register, how much? The fine.
Oh, the Thai authorities are saying that there's up to 100,000 baht fine or 2 years imprisonment. It's just typical red tape. It's enforcing people to register. So I'd say it's a revenue collection type of scheme.
Yeah. But stuff like that. But I mean, we talk about, and we.
US.
Sorry, we were both talking at the same time, man.
What the regulation is pretty much the same as what it is in the US, so they probably just adopted what they're doing.
Yeah, but that's the type of thing that which the meetings, we talk about at the meetings, and that we discuss that, and that's something that we can get over what we're doing. I mean, last meeting we did go into it quite a bit on different subjects, and that's one reason I rebuilt the names, because it came up last meeting, and so that's what Keith suggests. So that's Keith's suggestions. The pin pricing, as we talked about last time, the FEPOW family now own the pins. Okay. Now, when I bought the pins, I get them from Taiwan, Michael Hurst in Taiwan, who does the Taiwan site. And when I got them through, there was £89 import tax. And I tried to. Oh, that was good. And so there was £89. Well, put that on top of the pins, which, if I had any surplus over, I used to get a wreath and put in Yarmouth along the FEPOW memorial site. So I used to use the access to just put a wreath out. But now there's not much we're making on these pins now. We've had to pay this £89. So what me and Keith suggest is we put the pins up to 25p on 25p each on each pin. So is that okay? That's been suggested. So, I mean, that'll only make the pins, instead of £1, £1.25. I think that's cheap.
Sounds reasonable.
Yeah, that's cheap enough.
Yeah.
I mean, so we'll do that with the pins, okay? 25p on the pins. One good thing today, as I did put on the Facebook, the new Unbroken will be out next year. So it's going to be called Path to Redemption. It is the same story, but the producer from the first film, Unbroken, couldn't put the aftermath of the war. He couldn't put the post-war on, so he just did the war sequence. Well, he wants to now follow up with what happened to Zamperin, the one who was in Unbroken. He wants to put on the aftermath of what happened to him after the war and how the war affected him. And he went back to Germany, to Japan. He went back to Japan, and this is really telling the post-war story. So that could be quite good. Not going to be as dramatic as the first film, which was a terrific film. I thought that was really good. But that'll be okay. Subdomain Lincoln we just talked about, Martin, which I'll just go over quickly again. Richard didn't hear it. The FEPOW family, we can have subdomains. So if you want to put a website on yourself, I can sort out a subdomain, like Kevin could have had kevin.snowden.fepow.family, but he said he'd like to have the whole title of what he was talking about. So we did that. So you can either have under your name, say mine would be ron.taylor.fepow.family, and that would be the subdomain. And so instead of putting the www in front, you put the name in front, and that is a subdomain. So you can have a subdomain if you wish. If you have done research and you don't want to use a subdomain and you've done research, if you give me the link, I'll put it on the member section. So I've got member sites, so you can have your site listed there. So that's that. I did tell you I have rebuilt the FEPOW family, Martin. So for the rest, I've built the FEPOW family a website, and I'm now using NetFusion 2015, which does seem to be doing the job a lot better. I won't do the rest of my sites because I have got literally each part of my site is a node. They call it a node, and I have got thousands of nodes. So to do the rest of my site would be the rest of my life, really, rewriting everything I've done, which I'm not going to do. So I'm leaving the rest of my sites under NetFusion 11. But the FEPOW family wasn't a big thing, so I did that. So that's now under 2015. Ray, I've told you about. He did upload 2 videos on Uben. Have I got it right? He tells me off if I haven't. So he's uploaded 2 videos on it, and that is quite good. So that is in on OneDrive. So if you have a look on OneDrive videos, they are on there under Uben.
Okay. And are they videos he shot himself?
Yeah, they're videos he shot himself. One of them, I thought he was going to crash it. That was going down the runway, which they built there, and it's going down the runway, and you get to the end, and he's going quite fast, and he's got the noise of the engine and everything going down the aircraft, and he gets to the end, he suddenly stops. He was in a car, wasn't he? And he's put the sound in the background, and I thought it's going to crash it. Oh, that's quite good. I mean, it does show the runway, so that's
Yeah.
right. We've now got we're on Facebook. If you understand the members section, which this part is, this is the people who help run the websites, which you've helped me with. So that's separate from the Facebook pages. The Facebook members, most of them are just members. They don't pay anything in, okay? And we have got 279 now, and we've had it running just over the years, so that's quite good. We've gained quite a few. And one of the new members we've gained is Pauline Simpson. No, you haven't heard of Pauline Simpson. She's the NFFWARA secretary, which stands for National FEPOW Fellowship Welfare Remembrance Association. And she's also the FEPOW, not a vicar. I can't remember what she's called. Anyway, she does the services for FEPOWs, okay? She's joined the Facebook side. So we have got her on board now. Yeah, I got this one from Luke, and I'll read out what he says. I work for the world's longest running weekly sport TV program, Trans World Sport. We have been broadcasting for over 30 years in 40 countries. I am filming a short documentary feature on a man called Henry Johnny Sherwood, who was a footballer for Reading FC before joining the Royal Artillery. He went on to serve in several Japanese POW camps, including Changi, Havelock Road, Henbury, Kanu, and worked on the Burma Railway. He also witnessed the Nagasaki bombing and was one of the few survivors of a ship bombing. I'm trying to track down a prisoner of war to interview for this feature. He's going to find it really hard because, as you know, I mean, this year we've lost lots of people. They're near the 100-year mark now, and he's going to find it really hard to find someone. So if anyone can suggest anyone, fair enough. Now, this is for you three and the people who watch this on the secure pages. He wants to know if he can find anyone who can talk about it. So he wants a voice explaining what went on in the camps. Alistair did a really long video, Alistair Hercart, the Forgotten Highlander. He did a really nice video, which I have sent him the link to. Unfortunately, Alistair died about 3 years ago now. And Alistair was good at telling the story, so hopefully he'll find that interesting. If anyone can put forward a name, I've got the email address, so if anyone emails me with it, I can sort that out. So that's everything I've gone through. All right, so now, any other business? No? Can we hear? Can you hear us, Tim? If you can hear us, put your thumb up.
I think I can
you're
hear
there.
you. Yeah, I'll tell you what it is. It's because I'm on the boat and I'm on Wi-Fi.
Yeah.
And it's low water at the moment, and my aerials are not picking it up all the time. So.
It's sinking.
But I've been hearing you.
Yeah. Well, Tim.
I've been hearing you on and off.
Yeah, Tim is in Scotland on his boat on the west side of Scotland. Is that right?
That's right. Yeah.
Yeah. So he's got some really good scenery there. I watched a program last night on the TV about west of Scotland. That was absolutely brilliant. Because we used to love We used to love mountain walking in Scotland, and that, I mean, that's
I
beautiful.
love it up here.
Yeah, so that's really nice. Can't do it now, but I used to.
Yeah, I say, unfortunately, the Wi-Fi gives me a bit of a problem sometimes. Sometimes it works absolutely fine, and then I get days when it's a bit iffy. So.
Well, at least we can hear you now, Tim. We couldn't hear you before.
Yeah. I think I'll have to watch the video though to get most of it.
Yeah. Yeah. So myself, I've been doing something I wanted to do for ages, and that's my hometown. I did Norfolk. Sorry, I've got cramp. I've been doing my cabin and spending down, and over 70, I'm not as flexible as I used to be. And I'm doing the cabin and spending down, and my thighs are swollen. They ache like hell. It's when you get over 70. How old are you, Tim?
69.
Yeah, you're nearly there. It's to hurt.
I know. Tell me
yes.
about it.
Yeah. So I've been doing my hometown, and I've finished Suffolk now. So the idea of this is just so people can see the names that come from a village. To go into it more deeply, I could do, because these names come off the Japanese index cards. So on the Japanese index cards, they said where they came from, their hometown. So I've used them to put on my database. Now I could go further, but that's just unreasonable to even think about it, because to go further, I've got to go into each one independently. Well, Norfolk has got about 1,500, and Suffolk have got the same. So to go into each one and do the index cards is going to be completely unreasonable. So what I've done is I've just listed them as coming. I've put a map, and so you can click on the map, say Great Yarmouth, where I was born, and my dad come from, and you can click on Great Yarmouth and you get the list of all the FEPOWs. The same as Bury St Edmunds, whoever Ipswich, and you get a list of all the FEPOWs that came from that place. It's okay. It
looks
okay.
good, Ronnie. I had a look. It looks good.
Yeah, well, it's
I had a look as well.
Yeah, it's something I've been wanting to do for ages. I tend to do a lot for other people, and you don't tend to do anything for yourself. Well, to me, that was something I wanted to do. That's really why I started putting the websites on, because my dad felt guilty about getting home and leaving his mates behind. So that's something really that I'd like to look at. And that's ever so strange, because you look at the index cards, and my dad, before he went away, he worked at a shoe factory in Great Yarmouth. And when you go through the index cards, you see the shoe factory workers, the people that were FEPOWs and worked with him in the factory. And it's really strange, because he had quite a few friends who went with him to enlist. And it's very strange when you look through the lists of the index cards, find out their occupations. Most of them have their occupation before they were enlisted. And that is really interesting. Right. Any more business? Come on. The floor's yours now.
I've got one question, Ronnie. You know when you do your screenshots, or something else. Can we do that at our end as well?
What do you mean by screenshots, Tim?
Well, you know when you go to your other computer and put something up.
Yes, you can. Yeah. If you have a look on the right-hand side of your screen, you'll see share screen.
Yeah.
Right. If you click on share screen, don't do it now because you'll go off. If you click on share screen, you can then share whatever screen you want. So if you've got a special picture you want to put up, if you load it beforehand, you can share screen, just click on it. Now, on my other, because I've got both of my computers going here, I can find, like this one. I'm now going to put this one up. Right, can you all see that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's a page I did during the week, and I can go down so you can see the whole page.
Yep, can see that. Yep.
That's a page I put on because he did die about 2 or 3 weeks ago. He comes from North Norfolk, Roland. He comes from North Norfolk, and why I put his picture on is because I've never met him, but I had his picture and I noticed his badges. He's got a FEPOW family badge and he's got a FEPOW day badge.
Mm.
Mm.
Can you see them?
Yeah.
And I was proud of that. I was proud of that because that shows that the FEPOW family pages do get about. I'll stop sharing that now, so we're back. Yeah, so that does show that the pages do get about.
But we can do that without having to have another computer plugged in, can we?
No, I've done it on my other computer because it's handy for me because I can still talk to you and see you, and I can still operate my other computer. So I have actually got.
You're logged in twice, Ronnie. I see. Is that how you do it? He's in twice.
I've got both my computers on. So when I turn around this way, you see my side view. I'm looking at my other computer. I don't tend to use my laptop much. I only use it when I'm on holiday. But it's handy this way because my pictures from my other one are okay, but I can get my research up on the other one and show you. So if anyone wants to see anything, I can do it. So it is quite handy. You can do it, but unfortunately, you won't see what you're transmitting.
Right, that's what I meant. So we can't really tell whether it's working or not.
No,
it doesn't show up in the top right corner where the little icon of me is.
No, I've lost your icon.
No, I see you three, and then there's me in the top right corner, which is my video going out.
Yeah, that's your video going out.
But if I share a screen, does it not pop up there?
Yeah, try it, Richard.
All right, I'll show. I've got a picture to share with you. See what happens.
Yeah, see what happens.
Okay, let's try. No, it's not happening yet.
What you have to do is...
I've got another allow to do.
That's it.
There we go. Yeah.
Yeah, you're there.
You're seeing both bits, though, aren't you? Yeah.
Yeah. Well, if you have a look under share screen, you can pick out which one you want to share. Can you see that? Under share screen, if you click on share screen,
entire screen, or
I can continue sharing, and then I can pick which program I want to share, or I can share the screen.
Yeah, but actually, it doesn't pop up in the top right corner.
No, it doesn't.
No.
Although we did see it, Richard.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I saw a dentist chair. Is that what it was supposed to be?
Yeah, it was. Yeah. That was my grandfather's chair he made in camp.
Oh, let's have another look then. Let's have another look, Richard.
I'm having another go.
When you get the hang of it, that's quite easy to do. It's getting the hang of putting the screen on.
Yeah, it keeps asking me for permissions. Allow, yeah. It's weird. Please click on the padlock item above the user access permissions. There's a permissions thing somewhere. Okay, here we go.
You there?
Yeah.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah, we've got it. And he built
That's
a
it. That's
dentist
brilliant.
Well,
chair.
allegedly.
Yeah.
Yeah. So my link really with this is the guy who drew this is Stanley Jimson, who was quite an active in Paris prisoner of war circles till he died. But I call him my surrogate grandfather. I never knew my grandfather. He did lots of sketches. I think they're all in the Imperial War Museum. But I never knew my grandfather. So he told me that my grandfather designed this and built it in Chiang Kai camp.
Oh, that's really elaborate, isn't it?
It is. There was a few other bits and pieces he did like that, but yeah.
Yeah, that's really good. Well, things like that. Have you got a website, Richard?
I have a a very rudimentary one I set up years ago, but really just to get people networking or searching for areas of interest I have in my family history.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
Which just works actually.
Yeah, don't forget though that you can put things like that. If you wanted a subdomain, you could do that.
Yeah.
Right.
So it's a little bit fiddly share screen, but we get used to it, I guess.
When I first the first meeting we had, I found it very difficult. But now this is now our fourth meeting. I've got the hang of it a lot better now. But I find it's easier to use my other computer because I can then see what I've put on screen. Like
I can see because you effectively got two logins. Yeah.
Let me just. See, that's what I'm getting on my screen now. That's what I put on right at the beginning. It's sort of artist photo, artist sketches of the camps and from my collection of pictures I've got. So that's handy because you can put things like this on. If you were doing a talk, you could actually talk about it at the same time. So you could have your mic on while you're showing pictures. So it could be quite handy, particularly when you're doing talks. That's the cattle trucks going to Taiwan. Some of the pictures are quite good. It's a house of cards, bridge of cards, house of cards. That's a bridge of cards. That's a cholera fires. That one is very interesting. That was his brain. That's his body and his brain, and he was going through the torment when he got home, and he actually drew that sketch of the torment he was going through, what his brain was going through, which was quite good. I'll just sharing that. Right, we're back to normal.
Who drew those sketches?
They're all different sketches. Leo Rowlands. They're all different artists.
Yep.
I went through a stage where I did late 1990s. I collected a load of pictures, sketches, not the originals, copies, and I put them together and painting the horror. That is on it is on the internet. It's called Painting the Horror, and it was all sketches they did either in the camps or when they got back. That's okay. It's actually some of them are a bit. You think when I did the FEPOW community website, I did use one of Chalker's sketches. You've seen it loads of times where you see the one of the POWs helping another one who's really struggling walking. That's really, they capture the moment. You don't have to say a lot about them because they capture it. No, that's sketches are great, particularly if you can do an intro to them, which you could, Richard, with that. If you put your dad's story together, Richard, and included the sketches within it, that'd be brilliant. Because
it's my granddad actually.
Your granddad.
But they weren't his sketches, so I don't have access. I've only got 2, I think, that Stanley Jimson gave me. But I'll probably get them off the Imperial War Museum as well.
Yeah, but that'd be interesting. That'd be interesting to see. I mean, I've never seen a dentist chair before in the camps. I mean, the only picture I've got of a dentist is a chap was sitting on the bed and he's got his in his mouth and he's trying to pull a tooth out of him when he's sitting on the bed. I mean, that takes me back when I got pleurisy. One of the things I was thinking about when I was laying in hospital was if I was in the camps, I'd been dead by now because they didn't have the facilities they had in the hospital. And it's ever so strange because it took me back to when my dad came back. Because I was born 47 and my dad had an operation to remove part of a lung because he got a tropical disease. And so he had the operation when he came back. And so he had the same problem I had in hospital, breathing. And laying in bed, that really I went back to what my dad was when 1949, 50-ish, when he couldn't breathe and everything. That's disgusting, really, when you think about it. I mean, he got a tropical disease. If that had been TB, he'd have got a pension. But because they hadn't heard of the tropical disease, they wouldn't give him a pension. It's ridiculous. It's absolutely stupid. But Dad did. He blamed it on a lot of things really. The holy smokes. You've heard of the holy smokes? Yeah, the smokes. The only paper they had was the Bible, so they used to use the leaves they found in the jungle and dry them all off and put them in the part of the Bible and smoke them. They called them holy smokes. He blamed it a lot on that, and plus they were allowed. He did tell me how many. I think it was about 18 inches on the bunks each, on the bamboo bunks. So it didn't have a lot of room, and his brother was with him after about 6 months. Because Dad went June to the railway, and my uncle went about Christmas time. My dad was in the June parties, June 42, and then my uncle went about Christmas time. So he got him with him at Nunn Pladuk, and they slept together on the bamboo slots, and underneath was their ground. And Dad said if anyone went near his ground, it'd whack them. He said, that was my piece of ground. That was my grass I added to my rice, nobody else's. And that's what they did. They just plucked the grass and put it in their rice.
Wow.
So he could have got this tropical disease from anywhere, really. I mean, the grass is a good one to get it from, isn't it? You don't know what's been on the grass and anything. But no, that's Dad didn't talk about it much. I don't know about your dad, Tim.
No. Never. It wouldn't. I mean, there were odd things. He'd, have snippets. He'd suddenly say something like, "Oh, I'm lucky to have survived," or something like that. But if anything anything Japanese ever appeared on the television, he'd leave the room.
Yeah,
and he never touched rice. He refused to touch rice. And
we weren't allowed any rice.
Oh, we were allowed it, but
we were
for rice pudding. But Dad said, "I've had quite enough of that. Thank you very much," and walked off.
Yeah. No.
But the funny thing that always amazes me, although he seemed, quite rational about it, about the year before he died, his eyesight was going in a bit of trouble, and so they went by train on holiday, and they went on a coach party, and some Japanese tourists got on board, and Mum said they had to get off straight away. She said he came out in an awful sweat, and as soon as they opened their mouths, he had to get off the bus.
Yeah.
So I mean, it was obviously right below the surface somewhere.
Yeah.
But normally it just didn't affect him, I don't think, as such. Not latterly, anyway.
Dad, I think I've told you before that Dad let me read his diary. That was when in the 1960s, because I was real ban the bomb. I didn't believe in the bomb, and we used to go on a march as well with our placards, ban the bomb. But he let me read his diary, which he wrote on the way home, and then because I read his diary, I wanted to know more, so I started to buy books to find out more, because there was no internet then, of course. So, and the Bridge over the River Kwai, my dad hated, so that
they all do, I think.
That didn't tell me a lot at all. So I started getting books, and one of the books, well, the first book I got was Knights of Bushido, Lord.
Oh yes.
Yeah, that is.
Yeah.
Yeah, that is a bit. It's a bit down, isn't it? It's everything bad that happened he put in the book.
Yeah.
There's no talk of comradeship or anything. That was all the bad bits he put in the book. It's okay, but it's. I read that first, and I thought, oh, Dad went through all this, and then I started talking to him about it, and I did start to get things out of him. And when Mum died, he came to live with us, and he really did talk about it. He was then 80, and he did start to talk about it. And one day he sat in his chair, because he had his own chair in our house, and he sat in his chair, and tears were rolling down his cheeks. And I said to him, "What's the matter, Pop?" He said, "You don't want to know, boy." So I said, "Just talk about it, let us know what it's about." And he said, "Well, him and his mate, they signed a document, and I have got it on the internet. It was called the Cure Club, and they signed this document that because the hospital patients weren't working, they didn't get the same rice. Mm-hmm. They didn't get the same food as the rest of them worked. And so they signed a Cure Club. They all gave a bit of their food to the patients in the hospital. And him and his mate were out working, and they found bananas on a tree, and they took the bananas down, and they hid them in the only thing they had, the loincloth. So you mustn't see what it looked like, sticking up the front. Anyway, on the way back to camp, going into camp, his mate got caught with this banana, and they put him in the hold, which was a hole in the ground. That was just literally a hole dug in the ground with a bamboo grid across the top. Well, Dad went to see him that night when he got his rice, and he gave him a bit of his rice, and he promised to go back in the morning, which he did do, gave him some more rice, went off to work. When he came back, the hold was empty, and he went looking around the camp, and he found his head on a pole. Underneath was written, "Don't thieve." They'd actually cut his head off and put on a pole. honestly, that you just can't believe what they went through.
No,
and how that affected them afterwards.
I think the more you look into it, the worse it gets, and you can understand why they didn't want to talk about it.
Yeah, Dad said when he came back, he was told to forget it and get on with life. They didn't get no counselling at all. They were just told to get on with life and get on with work, get back to normal. That was it. You know, that which is nowadays. I mean, they'd get a lot more than that. The Hillsborough disaster, the police and everything got. After the Hillsborough disaster, they got loads of it, didn't they?
Yeah, I quite often think about that every time you read it in the paper. You know, it says, councillors appear left, right, and centre. I don't know whether they do any good half the time.
No. So, I mean, go on. Who was talking?
So, your father was Group 1, wasn't he? He was at Nonpleduc.
Yeah.
Yeah. Did he get sick at all? Was he in any of the hospital camps?
No, he was after the war. Dad was a good footballer. He played centre half, and they had some. I think I told you this before. They had some internationals in the camps. Dad played for England. The Australians were in it as well. So the Australians, Holland, Wales, Scotland, and the Japs. The Japs actually had a team in the internationals, and Dad did his knee, and so he actually was in hospital with his knee once. But apart from that, he didn't. He got malaria, but nothing fantastic. When he came home when I was little, he used to wake up sweating in the night, and sometimes he'd actually sleep on the floor. He wouldn't sleep in bed; he'd sleep on the floor. I used to wake up in the night with screams. He used to scream, and then you laid in bed, you hear him scream, and then you'd hear him actually walk the floor. He used to just keep walking the floor, up and down, and you just hear him doing it. And it wasn't till I got in my mid-teens and I started going out with my mates and meeting their families, I realised how bad Dad was, how that had affected him. I just thought it was natural. I just thought men behaved that way. I didn't see anything wrong in it until I started meeting my mates' parents, and I realised that we had problems at home. And that wasn't until I was in my mid-teens I realised that. You'd walk down. We used to go down Golston High Street shopping, and you used to walk down the high street, and somebody would walk towards you, and he'd actually say, "Come on, boy, get hold of your hand and take you across the road," because he didn't want to talk. He was very strange like that. He was, but you can understand why now. You can understand why that affected him that way.
They carried the trauma for many years. Yeah.
Oh, he still had nightmares when he lived with us when he was 80, and it took me back to my youth, hearing him scream in the night and everything. That did actually, that started to affect my family because I had 3 children at home then, and they got to a stage they wouldn't even go in the room with him. He got dementia.
Oh dear.
And it wasn't. Well, he did have problems. He did have a lot of problems. But you can understand it though. What they went through, you can understand it. But one of the things he didn't actually, he felt was wrong was when he moved from Nunpleduc up country when they closed down the service yards at Nunpleduc, because that's where the service yards were at the beginning. And he moved up country, and he had to he had to put the men on the fires after cholera, and he just insisted they were still alive because they moved on the fire, and that's one of the nightmares he used to have. You know, they were still alive, boy. He told me that they were still alive, boy, when we put on the fire. Of course, they weren't alive. That was the heat made the muscles contract, and they did sit up. And that's a natural thing for the body to do when they're dead. They sit up. But he wouldn't have that. They were still alive. That's horrible.
Yes.
Mm. But come on, I'm doing all the talking. You do.
But you're more interesting.
No.
Richard,
it's interesting. I mean, yeah, I was
Richard,
just going to say that I didn't get the stories from my. Go on, Martin.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, just interested the sketches you had, the dentist chair at Chunkai. So your grandfather was at Chunkai, was he?
He was. So I'm quite a way behind you guys. So I've got the prisoner of war, the green sheet. I've got a list of the camps he was in, and he was there at the end. Yes, I think. Right. But I never knew him, so the only anecdotes I have is actually by the guy who did that sketch, Stanley Jimson, who did a lot of sketches, as I mentioned. But thinking about how you're saying about people who did talk and didn't talk, this guy actually did talk about it, and I remember him coming to my school and giving a talk to the whole school about POW camp in, gosh, what was I? I was 15 years old, so and it was a very open talk. I still remember him pulling out a guy from the junior house who was probably only 12 years old and asked, how heavy were you? Well, I was, as a fully grown man, I was the same weight as you, 5 stone. And that when you see a big guy and you think he weighs the same as this little guy from age 12, it makes you realize the starvation and stuff. But sadly, I don't know a lot about my grandfather's time. I'm quite interested to hear how you guys track some of the camps they went to.
Right. What regiment was he in?
Royal Artillery.
Right. Okay. And he was Group 2, was he?
Now you've lost me. I don't know what that means.
Okay. Right. Okay. It's just that there's several ways that you can track people other than liberation questionnaires, and there's also hospital records that you can look through. Because I've been looking, I've actually got a lot of the hospital records now through the WA 347 series, and I've been going through a lot of the people I've been researching from the point of view they've either died or they don't have a liberation questionnaire, or if they do have a liberation questionnaire, they've not filled any camps in. And actually going through the hospital records actually starts to place people at certain points, which has been quite useful.
Would you get these from Kew?
Yes.
Yeah.
So I was over in Kew in June earlier this year, and with a couple, my wife actually came with camera in hand and did a lot of photography as well, and with a couple of other research friends, we managed to actually photograph the whole series. So that's really been useful then for now, going through them and tracking down where people were. For example, we've actually seen that some people, obviously, who were Group 4 end up in Group 2 hospitals, and Group 2 end up in Group 1 hospitals, and so it just the distribution is never uniform perfectly, and some guys ended up being moved around all over the place. And we now know, of course, that at Cowdin they didn't have a main hospital, so all those guys at Cowdin were actually being moved up to Chunkai and up to Kanchanaburi for treatment, and then they were being taken back to camp once they'd been treated. So it starts to put another dimension on things, when you're researching, sort of another angle to start looking at.
Yeah. Do you use Find My Past?
That's what makes it interesting.
Yes, in the past. what I like to do is try and get as many photographs of the documents as I possibly can, because you can take them home and you can sit and actually start reading through and start studying them. With Find My Pass, it's great for index cards, and I started researching index cards about 3 or 4 years ago, before Find My Pass started their project, and I spent a lot of money going to queue and pulling out boxes and going through cards and photographing cards, and then all of a sudden I got to the end of doing the beds and hearts, and finally gotten all 940 cards, and then all of a sudden, oh well, you can get them online now.
Yeah.
Which has been great, of course, but I suppose the other part is FEPOW does great work with the liberation questionnaires, but there's some massive gaps in the so I've actually been there and photographed several files myself, but there's 90 odd files to go through, of course, and it's a lot of work, and they're not easy to photograph because they're very light and very flimsy, and they take a lot of time to turn each page and go through them. But yeah, look, certainly that's brings a lot of benefit, once you can start tracing camps and things. But yeah, it's proving now that there's other areas you can look at, other sources of information that'll start identifying that guys were at certain places at certain times. Even with in W0356, which is on microfilm, that's the war crimes witness cards for JAG, and they start pulling it because they code all the war crimes against a camp. So you've got Japanese crime, or you've got JAM, which is Japanese massacre, and they'll actually index a camp to or a particular war crime to a camp, and it comes up with that index number. And then, of course, you go through the witness cards, and it starts to identify men were at that particular place because they did an affidavit. Then, of course, it'd be perfect if you could actually go and find the affidavit, because it starts to tell enormous amounts of information. But of course, a lot of those are probably got stored in local police stations and local offices and so forth, because not all that information got to courts through the war crimes. So the ones you do find have been fantastic. They give you some really, really good insight and really good information on what actually took place in those crimes. Some of the ones in Singapore are quite fascinating, because they start to really talk about some of the gruesome, horrible things that took place. The Japanese had a habit of murdering guys after they captured them. They'd interrogate them, they'd tie them to trees with their hands behind their back, sitting on the floor, and then, of course, when they wanted to dispose of them, they just bayoneted them through the groin, just left them. So, yeah, and I've read several accounts like that now. It's quite horrific. And there's one particular one that I've researched intently, which is involving 5 members of the 5th Edwards who were at McRitchie Reservoir, who got captured. And I've got Lieutenant Oakley's affidavit, which is great. It really gives a good description of what took place. But he never could actually account for what happened at the end of the situation. And I've wondered for a long time what actually happened, because what I do know is that there was 5 guys who were captured, and I knew that one of them survived, and I knew that Lieutenant Oakley had survived, because he'd been taken away to a rear Japanese HQ for interrogation, and they'd left these other guys tied up at this old house, colonial houses, and I've been wondering for a long time what actually happened to this one fellow who survived. And it's not until recently that I purchased the Philippines recordings from the Imperial War Museum, 7 reels of him basically sitting in an interview and talking about his experiences. And lo and behold, he was one of the patrols that actually came across this group of guys who were tied to the trees. And he gives a fantastic description about how he said we were in a patrol of 8 guys, and he said this Japanese had these guys tied up to the trees. He said, and we couldn't do anything. He said, because there was only 8 of us, and there was a platoon of Japanese. He said, so we went back to HQ, and organised artillery to come up. And of course, the artillery came up and then sent a barrage of shells in there, caused the Japanese to withdraw. And of course, before they withdrew, they stabbed these guys in the groin. And the one fellow that survived, I now learned how he survived, because he described. He says there's one fellow. He said name of Piles, Private Piles. He said he was a short fella and he had big, long, baggy khaki shorts on. He said, and when they stabbed him, he said they stabbed through his shorts and missed him altogether.
Yeah.
But because they were like traumatized and he was frenzied, they thought they'd killed him. And of course they were being bombarded, and so they took off. And so the patrol went back to discover this grisly scene, and lo and behold, he was still alive. He's in a terrible mess, but he was still alive. So that's another amazing thing that I've come across, is that like, you never give in on when you put a piece of a puzzle together or a piece of the story together. There's always something else out there. There's always an answer, and by buying the recordings, it's just given me that fantastic insight. It's like I sit and listen to it. Wow, that's what happened, And he was there and experienced it. And he, of course, he was one of the great artists on the railway, Meninsky. A lot of his drawings are now at the Imperial War Museum, and a lot of them featured in Weary Dunlop's book and in his diaries. And in interviews, it was quite interesting that he turned around and says, he says, I had a number of drawings that disappeared. He says, and this fella, Colonel Dunlop, he published his book, and I had a look at his book. And there was my drawings.
Yeah. Yeah.
And he didn't seem too bothered about it, of course. But he actually did say that, because he was at Tassau, and he actually said, I never actually worked on the railway. He said all the time. He said I was at Tassau. He said I worked on the road, on the service road.
Yeah.
He says I've never actually worked on the railway once. And he did get sick there, so he spent some time suffering from ulcers and so forth. And he said that he met up with some other guys who were sketchers, and he talks about George Old, the Sherwood Forester, and he describes George Old as being the best artist he'd ever seen. He said he was just a natural, perfect drafting and so forth. And he said, but the trouble was that he always insisted on keeping his own drawings with him. He said everyone else gave up their drawings to the medical staff, and he says that the medical staff were less likely to be searched and so forth. So that's why a lot of drawings had survived the war. He said, but George always insisted on keeping his drawings. He said, and it was right up until close to the end of the war. He maintained all these drawings with him, and then, of course, he was subjected to a camp raid by the Japs, for an inspection, and they found drawings and took them, and they were subsequently destroyed. So, apparently, I think there's only about one or two of his drawings that's still available, which is great shame. Yeah, but yeah, look, those interviews at Imperial War Museum are just fantastic. I've actually bought 3 now of the guys of the 5th Ed. I've also got Sergeant Burgess, who was on the Hofuku Maru, survived the sinking of the Hofuku Maru. He gives some really good insight into how the parties were selected and so forth, and the Japan parties were formed and put together. And then with another fella, Private Mendelsohn, he was quite ashamed of himself, actually. He said at the end of the Battle of Singapore, he said, I was rolling drunk. And he said they were up on Wireless Hill at Caldecott Hill in close to McRitchie, and I think he was with a bunch of Royal Northumberland Fusiliers, and he said when the surrender was announced, he said we were in these plush colonial houses which everyone had abandoned, and he said the wine cellars were full, and we just got rolling drunk. Yeah, so there's just some fantastic little anecdotes and stories out there. Yeah. And of course, the other one is and I think this is something that a lot of people do overlook, is the is the borough archives. Like at Bury St Edmunds and at Bedford and at Cambridge. There's just masses of great stuff in these small archives. A lot of people head to Kew and look through all the sort of the main documents, but there's some really good handwritten stuff. Personal accounts and priceless little bits of information. And when you start
over the years, I've met a lot of people. So,
yes,
because Dad we used to go to the FEPOW parties. We had FEPOW parties in Boston High Street, so for the Yarmouth area. So we used to go to them, and the FEPOWs used to run them. And the FEPOWs, honestly, they knew how to entertain. They did really, because in the camps, you hear all the doom and gloom, but they did play games in the camps. There was comradeship in the camps, simple games, but they played them. And they knew how to entertain. But when we had the shop in Yarmouth, I used to have some FEPOWs call in because Dad used to come in the shop. So I used to listen to all the stories. And then when Dad died, they still used to come in and see me. Jock Simon, he was one of them. He only lived 200 yards down the road. And he wrote Helen 5. He was on the Fuku Maru. And he used to come in and see me and tell me loads of stories. He couldn't half spin a yarn. That was brilliant to listen to him because he was really an upright man. He was a bit taller than me, very straight back. And that was a pity later on when he used to come past in his electric wheelchair. But up till then, he used to walk in the shop. It was it was good to listen to him, the stories he used to tell me. And then Alistair Urquhart, who wrote The Forgotten Highlander, he came down to the 2007 FEPOW gathering I did, FEPOW Day gathering. He came down to that in all his gear and everything. And we kept in touch for ages. And he used to tell me stories. He was a good storyteller. But you got some good characters. They were characters. They could really, you could see how they survived the camps. Because Dad told me the only way he survived the camps was he completely forgot about home. He wiped that completely out of his memory. Home was not there. And he just talked to my granddad. My granddad died in 1938, so he talked to him all the way through the camps. And he insisted that his dad got him through the camps, just talking to him. And he'd been dead, 4 or 5 years. But it's peculiar when you think that they could wipe home out. And Dad said that there was 3 ways to survive the camps. Go to religion. He said, but Dad wasn't religious, but he said, go to religion, completely forget about what happened, home and everything, and get involved in the hospital or bakery or something like that. Get involved in that. He said, and then you could survive. But the ones who didn't survive, not all of them, but some of them who didn't survive, they just went to bed at night and they just didn't wake up in the morning. They'd given up. He said, if you gave up, that was it. But you were talking about being tied to a tree and everything. And my uncle, he wasn't on the railway, but he was in the pushback through Burma with the 2nd Royal Norfolks. He was my uncle, and they were pushing back through Burma. And I think I told you last time when they were in the jungle and they'd set up an ambush for the Japanese, and he was laying there with his rifle on the setup they'd done in the jungle, and he heard a noise behind him. Turned around, and there's a Japanese standing over him with his gun pointed at his head, and the Japanese just went bang, smiled and walked away, left him laying there. He just smiled and walked away. And he said, he said one of the things he did regret, and he really did regret it, is that they had to retreat. And so they'd left their wounded with some hospital staff in the jungle for the Japanese to look after. So they retreated. And when they went back, all the ones that had been hospitalized and the staff were all pinned out on the ground over bamboo shoots. He said the next time we took Japanese, we pinned them out on the ground and we drove the truck over them. We kept on driving the truck over them. He said that he regretted that because he didn't know if they were the same Japanese who'd done it.
That's right, yeah.
And so he did honestly regret that. You can't always blame a whole race.
Of course.
You can't blame a whole race. I mean, we've had some rotten people in our time.
Yeah.
I
mean, there's lots of stories about how some of the guards shared stories with the prisoners and showed pictures of their families and shared family stories. So they weren't all inhumane.
No. My dad said he'd like to have met one Japanese guard called Otter. He said he'd like to have met him after the war because he used to give them cigarettes and everything. He said they weren't all bad. You had some rotten ones. He said the worst guards were the Sikhs, and he said the Sikhs and the Koreans. He said they were the worst ones. They used to knock them about a lot, mainly because the Japanese used to knock them about, so they took it out on the prisoners. Next in line, the prisoners got it. But anyway, I've got to think about going because I've got to go down to the surgery and have my flu injection. Which I don't like injections the best of times, but I've got to go down and have that. Although we haven't had a lot at the meeting, it's been quite good.
Yeah, I enjoy it anyway.
Yeah, it's good to have a chat. There's a lot of information flying about, which is great.
It'd be good to sort of start getting something structured around some project stuff, like you say Keith mentioned that you need to sort of know who's working on what, and then obviously we can actually start directing some questions maybe, or some bits and pieces.
The problem is with the research I do, as such, it's not on a small area. So my research goes on the whole of conflict, Philippines, Hong Kong, Japan, all over the place. So I don't concentrate on one particular area. So my research...
Probably my area that I work on the most in Thailand is Group 2. So I know an awful lot about Group 2 work areas.
Yeah.
And then obviously in Singapore, around the McRitchie area is another area I work on. So they're the two areas I work on, in depth.
Yeah. You see, I don't do that. I do tend to go. Someone will get in touch with me on the internet and say, "Have you got information on so and so?" Or I'll start researching something, and I'll come across something that I think, "Cool, I like that. That could be good." And then you'll go off on another direction. And I do that quite often. And I've been working on the Java index for ages, but I haven't touched it for about 3 months because I've had so many other things come up.
Yeah, but
and so you tend to leave it and get on with something else.
Ronnie, that's fine. I mean, you're then the broad researcher. Martin's got own ideas, and if I would be only at the moment, I'm only in my own family. So, but for my side, I think what I've picked up today is Martin's given a couple of good references there for someone like me starting out on a personal one, a family history one. Places to look for the next step after the liberation cards. So, even a newbie's guide.
Yeah, did you fill in a research form?
It's still in my inbox or my draft box to send you.
No, if you go into,
so I've got to do that still.
That's something I did when I redid the website. I did actually put a research form live on the within the site. So if you do go to research, you can click on the form and fill it out online, and that'll just automatically come to me.
Okay.
So that if you can do that, and then I'll see what I can find out this.
Is that the same as? Yeah, brilliant. I'll do that, Ronnie. It's been.
Let me just have a look.
I think you sent it out by email as well once.
Yeah, I did right
and
at
I
the
started
beginning.
it, but I had to go and look up some service numbers. Yeah, I just never got around to finishing it. But
if you go to the secure bit, you'll see that I have reorganized it now, because you can see members section up top, and
so I'll
and you go into research and names, and then up the top I've underlined research and form. So if you click on that and fill it in, research and form.
I'll do the online one.
Yeah, do the online one, and then when I get at this end, I'll when I get chance, I'm going to go through all these and see if I can make sure I've got Roll of Honour pages on for everyone. Because when I do a Roll of Honour page, I do go into it with a find my past files and put together as much as I can, and if people have got the liberation form on. Sometimes they have.
Yeah, I have that one already. Yeah.
But my dad just put a line through his. He wouldn't fill anything in. So the only way I've been able to sort my dad out is from what he actually told me and what I've found out since. He just said he wanted to get home and he didn't want to fill it in, so he just put a line through it, which is, you can understand why in a way, you know. But luckily he did write it all down on the way home, so I did get it all. But it's
yeah, my grandfather's one has about 10 places listed on it.
Yeah. Well, yeah. If you fill in the form, and then I'll put a Roll of Honour page on.
I'll do it.
And then I'll put as much together as I can. It's nice to see a Roll of Honour page. I mean, they deserve a lot more than that. I mean, from what they went through, the FEPOW Day, I started 2005, about 2005. The government wouldn't do anything about it because I said we wanted a day for the FEPOWs, to remember the FEPOWs. That's a Remembrance Day. And they wouldn't do anything about it. And the FEPOWs we did have that was the FEPOW community then, which I started about 2000. We had a lot of FEPOWs in it. And the FEPOWs said that they wanted August the 15th, because that's the day they could look back and remember their mates. That was a day. That was the only time they could do that, when they were liberated. And so they wanted August the 15th. But unfortunately, VJ Day is August the 15th, and the government said I had to, before they'd look into it, I had to get signatures together, and I had to get over 500. Well, I got over 500, and I sent it to the government, and they rejected it because that was VJ Day, so they wouldn't have it. So what we did is we said that we'd still hold it, although that isn't a recognised day, we recognise it. So FEPOW Day is something that we carried on doing. And, you know, that my FEPOW Day is either in my garden or somewhere where I can sit peacefully and remember. That's my FEPOW Day. I don't like going to memorial services. I just don't like it. So I use my own day. That's a day that is my day, and we've got a nice view up North Norfolk where I can sit there and I can just remember. It's a lovely view, and it's a quiet view, nobody else about, and that's my day. It just all depends how you can do it. You know, some people want a church, some people want people around them, remembrance. But I don't. I like it quiet. So, but at least we remember. So FEPOW Day is a day. It's a day I wish the government would say yes to, but there you go. But we've got to say goodbye now.
Yeah.
Thanks everyone for attending.
Well, thank you, Ronnie.
Thank you.
No, this has been good.
Thanks, Ronnie, for setting us up again.
It's been very good. I've enjoyed it, and I've learned a lot. I've been listening. I've learned a lot today, particularly Martin and all these forms. Unfortunately, I'll never make it to Kew. If I travel to Kew, I'm not writing pages, and if I'm not writing pages, as I say, I'm realistic. I'm 70. I'm getting to the end of my time, and how much longer am I going to be able to write pages if I'm not about or where else? So.
Well, that's exactly right. It's really all about sharing now. It's everyone's doing their bit, and it's amazing what people can help you out with, because sometimes it comes from the most unexpected places. You can be just talking to someone, like, for example, like Richard, who's starting out, but you could talk to Richard and he could have just one vital little bit of information, just really,
that opens the door.
Yes.
Just one little thing that opens a door.
Yeah. And it happens over and over.
That's what I've said to you in the past. I love jigsaws. I just love jigsaws.
Yeah.
And I'm a television engineer, and so my brain is putting things together. And that's how I work. And I love jigsaws. And for me, researching is a jigsaw. You find a piece, and another piece joins onto it, and you start to see a picture. And that's what jigsaw. That's what researching is all about. Just finding another piece that opens another door, and sometimes you get a real kick. I told you when I found something, I was running around my workshop here. Yes! People saw me then and thought I was mad. Anyway, thanks everyone.
There he goes again.
Really appreciate it. Yeah, we're now going
cheers.
now.
Have a good weekend.
See you all later. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.